So yesterday in math you did a Desmos exploration of translations. I wanted to add something in your notes that you could follow and make sure that you have a clear summary of what yesterday was about. So that's what today is. So the unit that we're doing is 10-4 translations. And I would recommend that you turn your paper sideways for this so that you can kind of follow the same format I have. I have a piece of paper here that's laid out sideways like landscape orientation. So for translations you always start with a parent function. We're going to put that in the middle. So the parent function can change. The parent function could be all sorts of different functions, but we're going to just call it f of x in the middle here. I'm going to put a rectangle around that. So what a translation does is it takes our parent function and it just slides it along the plane. It moves it to different locations along the plane. For a translation, when you're translating, you don't stretch or grow or anything. You just slide around on the plane. Okay, for my notes today, I'm always going to use the example of 3 units, but you can do this with any number. I'm just using 3 as an example. So one kind of translation is a vertical translation. So for a vertical translation, you're either going to move up or down. So I'm going to start with up. So if we want to take that parent function and move it up 3 units, then the way we can do that is we take our new function, which I'm going to call g, and we take our old function and we add 3 to the output. So we're going to add 3 on to the end of our function. I'm going to put that in an oval. I'm going to give you a couple of different examples because it all looks slightly different depending on what your parent function is. Let's pretend that your parent function is a good old quadratic. So we've got our new function would look like x squared, the quadratic, and then we'd add 3 onto the end of it. I'm going to put the examples in kind of cloud shapes. Let's pretend that our parent function is the square root function. Then our new function would look like the square root of x. Notice how the square root sign stops right after the x, plus 3. So the plus 3 is added on to the end. Order of operations, I would take the square root of the number first, and then I would add 3 onto it. Here, order of operations, I would square the number first, and then I would add 3 onto the end of it. Okay. Going down is very similar. So if we're going to translate down 3 units, then we're going to subtract to the output. So we're going to subtract from the output. So our new function would be the old function minus 3. Okay, an example of that would be, well, let's pretend that your old function was an exponential function. Maybe your old function was 2 to the x. So if it was 2 to the x and you need to translate it down 3 units, you're going to subtract 3 from the end. So you would just first raise it 2 to the x power and then you would subtract 3 for your output. Or let's pretend that your function, oh, I didn't do that as a cloud. That one was supposed to be a cloud because it's an example. This one is, let's say the parent function is absolute value of x. Well, then you would subtract 3 after the absolute value. Okay. So these are vertical translations. Up and down are vertical. Horizontal are sideways translations, and the 2 options for horizontal are you could go right or you could go left. If you're going right 3, and we're going to put a little star here because these are the ones that are a little different, it seems like the number line anyway would be positive, but in order to go right 3, we need to subtract. We do the opposite when it's horizontal. The mnemonic device that I talked about a little bit in the other video is horizontal is horrible. We do the opposite. We have to change the sign. So even though we're going in the positive direction, we subtract 3. We do it to the input this time. So we're going to do our subtraction first, and then we're going to apply the operations of the function. So let's pretend that our function is the square root function. Our new function would look like the square root of x minus 3. Notice how this time the square root bar goes all the way across and includes the 3, which is different from translating vertically. When we're translating vertically, we don't include the 3 under the square root sign. Order of operations, here I would subtract 3 first, and then I would take the square root of it. Here I would square root first and then add 3. Okay, another example is, let's say that we have the absolute value function. And then we would do absolute value of x minus 3, and that would take that absolute value function and shift it 3 units to the right. Left is going to be the opposite of that, so here's a left translation. G of x is equal to f of x plus 3. We're going to add 3 to the input if we're going to go left. Okay, this one is also horrible because it's also horizontal. So what that looks like is, let's say that your function is 2 to the x. If your function is 2 to the x, then your translation would look like 2 to the x plus 3. I'm going to add 3 and then make the x the exponent. So I put the plus 3 with the x in the exponent. Or if your function is the quadratic function, then it would be x plus 3 and then square it. So you add the 3 first and then you square. Okay. So this mapping is a way of remembering all of your translations and having them all in a really nice location in your notes. I hope this helps, and good luck with tonight's homework.